Hello, everybody. Today marks the day of the start of this multi-episode series. This multi-episode series will cover everything on how to program, from split and frequency today, to intensity, to your volume, to your exercise selection. This will consist of 4 episodes, which will explain in enough detail for any person to fully understand how their split should work while still being easy to digest. Now, let's get on to the video. With split and frequency, you have to take in multiple factors. Not only in the gym, for example, how much time do you have, how much you actually enjoy that split, but also external factors like, are you playing sports? Are you doing other activities? Do you really want to prioritize being in the gym for longer hours? Or would you rather be there for short hours so you can actually enjoy other things? And yes, this does matter. First, I'm going to cover frequency. Frequency is very significant, as if you're not training at least 2 times a week for every single muscle group, you're missing out on essential strength development and muscle growth. Now, why is this true? As we know, the first set of an exercise is the most effective. So if you manage to get this first set done in as many sessions in a week, it will prioritize muscle growth and strength development, as we can see in some graphs I might display up. Now, why is this important, you may ask? If you prioritize more volume, for example, which I'll get onto later in the series, over your frequency, you'll end up realizing that your fatigue management will be incredibly difficult, as you are balancing high amounts of volume instead of just going to the gym more often. As I said earlier, the first set is the most effective. Every set after becomes about 40% as effective for muscle growth, according to this chart or graph shown by Chris Beardsley. Now, you may be wondering, why is this a significant factor? When training at lower frequencies, for example 2, you may be realizing that your volume has to be higher. Yet this increased volume won't make up for that loss in frequency, as your second set won't be as stimulating as the other first set you'll get with a high frequency split, which is why this is an important factor. Now, should you train twice or 3 times a week when it comes to every muscle? See, this is where it comes not only to preference, but also capability. I personally choose 3 times a week, which is the most often I am able to, so I use a full body split, which I'll get onto later in the video. Some people though might want to train 2 times a week in terms of every muscle group, and this also works, yet prioritizes slightly different things. Now, let's talk about splits. Splits link into frequency very deeply, as the more frequent you have to train, the different your split can look. For example, if you're training at a 1 times a week frequency, which I do not recommend to anyone, you could train basically any split as it would work, yet you wouldn't get much out of it compared to the other types of splits. Now, if you were training at a 2 times a week frequency, I would really recommend going for an upper lower or an upper lower push pull legs. Especially if you're in powerlifting, I'd recommend the upper lower push pull legs for 2 reasons. The first reason is that you can manage your fatigue slightly more with a push, pull, and leg session, as you can spread out certain lifts that you feel like you want to focus on more. The second reason is that because you are doing so much volume on your compounds already, you may feel like you just want to have some days where you get to spread out your workload some more. So you allow yourself to almost relax a bit more instead of just being constantly pressured to do an upper lower. On the other hand, if your only aim is muscle growth, upper lower would be advised, just because you're in the gym less days a week, which means that your CNS fatigue would be lower. What does this mean? It means that you can recruit more motor units in each session, technically speaking, because what you're able to do is that you are able to prevent as much fatigue by going throughout the week more, and that allows you to recover more. This means that you can potentially be progressing faster, which means getting stronger quicker, which means potential faster muscle growth. Now, let's move on to 3 times a week frequency splits. The 2 splits I would recommend are again an upper lower, but now a full body variant. So the upper lower variant would be an upper lower 6 times a week, consisting of 3 upper sessions and 3 lower sessions. Now, what is the advantage to this? First advantage is that you get to be in the gym more, which is a plus for some people because they really do enjoy it. This means that they get to spend more time in something they enjoy, which can then increase motor unit recruitment, as enjoyment is a big factor in recruiting motor units. Now, when I do refer to motor unit recruitment, remember this all stems down from a principle. So if you are watching this in the future, some of this could be outdated. If you're lifting for pure muscle growth, 3 times a week is advised, whether this is upper lower at 6 times a week, or if you are doing a full body session 3 or every other day. Now, if you are powerlifting, this is where the story becomes different. As a powerlifter, I still train at full body just because I prefer it, yet it does get very difficult, especially with accessory work, as you have got a lot of demand on your CNS. However, if you train at a 2 times a week frequency, you can start to spread your days out more. For example, on an upper-lower split where you prioritize upper frequencies and then your lower frequencies, or even an upper-lower and push-pull legs combo. Now, why is this important, you may ask? When you're powerlifting, you have a great CNS demand. This is because not only you're training yourself to lift heavy, but there's also a lot more volume required in powerlifting, so you can get used to the movement as much as possible. This means that accessory work will then be feeling tiring. So if you choose a 3 times a week frequency split, you may have to realize that your volume should be much lower so you can manage all this fatigue. Now, why would you do upper lower 6 times a week, other than the enjoyment? First of all, you benefit from frequency, which means that you are able to obviously have higher amounts of motor unit recruitment more often throughout the week, which means more muscle growth. But remember, mechanical tension is still the pure muscle growth factor, so do not forget to be pushing every set to failure or near failure, which I will cover in a future video in this series. Now, the advantages with upper lower 6 times a week is that you also get to be in the gym for technically less time, as because you are training so frequently, you only need 1 to 2 sets per exercise, and because it's an upper and a lower day, you could probably get each session done in around 45 minutes to maybe an hour. Now, why is this advantageous to some people? Some people work jobs where they end up having really awkward hours, so even if they are able to manage to go to the gym every day, it could be for a very short amount of times, so this is great for muscle growth. Now, for powerlifting, I wouldn't really use this split, just for the reason of a lot of carryover fatigue, because when you are in the gym that much in a week, plus you have tons of volume from your powerlifting, you only get 1 recovery day in a week, which means that your body will be very fatigued and will probably demand more rest on your next Monday session. So instead, this is why if you really do demand 3 times a week frequency, I would be more tempted to use a full body split or even a full body upper lower variant. When it comes to full body, I would recommend 2 things. If your aim is for muscle growth, remember your sessions will still take quite a long time, around 2 hours or even longer if you prefer more exercises. Now, I would personally do less sets in this, but obviously, as I said in other parts of this video, this will be covered later on. Now, if you're powerlifting, I can give you some advice on what I do. What I do is I run a squat bench day, squat deadlift day, and then on Saturdays an SBD day. Now, my Monday squat bench days, I only do 2 sets of a bench and 2 sets of a squat, and these are taken with very high intensity on the bench, yet slightly lower, yet still very high intensity on the squat. Now, I then follow this up with the rest of my full body session. My sessions last about 2 hours 15 minutes, just because setting up a squat and a bench will take longer than just going through a normal session. On the Wednesdays, I will choose a squat deadlift day. A bench deadlift day. And this is where you obviously bench, same methods as I did on the Monday session, and deadlift I would again do 2, maybe 3 sets on this. And then I would follow through with the rest of my full body day. Now, Saturdays is an SBD, so I will still do parts of my session along with the squat, bench, and deadlift, yet I won't do every other exercise that I usually do on the other days. And this is solely just for the purpose of time, as I really don't want to be in the gym for so long after doing a full SBD, because it is just really tiring, intra or not. When I mentioned a upper lower full body variant, you could incorporate 5-day-a-week sessions of an upper lower rest full body. Now, yes, this does seem awkward because you could have some sessions where you are going 2 days in a row. Because if you did an upper on a Monday, a lower on a Tuesday, an upper on a Wednesday, and a lower on a Thursday, that Wednesday and Tuesday session together could be very fatiguing. And after you've done your lower on Thursday, you can rest on the Friday, do your full body on your Saturday, and then take the Sunday to rest. Now, if you are aiming for pure muscle growth, this could be great, especially if you want 3 times a week frequency and a bit of variety in your split. This could also be great if you do work on the weekdays and take breaks on the weekends, so you can spend more time in the gym on your full body day. Now, if you're powerlifting, I'm a bit 50-50 with the split, just because of the Tuesday to Wednesday jump over can be very fatiguing on some people, especially training 4 days in a row with no rest. On top of that, it could feel like you're almost in the gym too much at once, again because you're spending 4 days in a row and just at the gym, especially with the amount of volume you may have to be doing in your block. It could just end up really taking a hit on not only your physical but also your mental. You may be wondering, if you're already pretty experienced in the gym, why haven't I mentioned anterior posterior? Now, especially if you're powerlifting, I wouldn't recommend this, just because there's a lot of carryover fatigue. For example, on a deadlift, you will train not only your erectors and your glutes, but you will also get some quad work done in. Very minor, yet can fatigue you. This fatigue can then carry over to your anterior sessions the next day, which then means that you're putting yourself in a worse state for your sets. And then if you're aiming for just muscle growth, the same could apply, especially if you still do some compounds like your hinges, because hinges can end up leaving a lot of fatigue all over your body, and especially when you're training muscle groups that could cross over, it could become really apparent, especially if you do something like a lat pullover and decide to use full range of motion. You could not only be training your triceps, but then also your latissimus and your lower pecs. If I was to recommend a split, or 2 splits we'll say, because you've got muscle growth and I'm also covering powerlifting, which 2 splits would I recommend? Now, for muscle growth, I would personally choose a full body, just because you'll have most of the week just to recover. You spend 4 days recovering and only 3 days in the gym. It also means that you can train everything in one session, which means that it's almost easier to remember. At the same time, you may like spending slightly longer in the gym, so that's a plus side for you. Again, full body sessions just do not have to last so long. You can easily get a full body done anywhere from an hour and a half to an hour 45 if you know what exercises to pick. Now, if you are powerlifting, I personally still do full body, and that's just because I love the split too much to leave it for now. But if I was to recommend someone who wanted to start powerlifting, I'd personally tell them to do an upper lower push pull legs. And even though, yes, this is 5 days in the gym, which can be a lot of fatigue for a person, I feel like if they know how to allocate their volume with either a coach or by watching videos like these, they can really learn that having slightly lower frequency to allow them to focus more on volume base to really perfect their technique in this sport of powerlifting, they can really make it far. Okay, everybody, thank you for watching. I really do hope you've enjoyed this type of informative video. And remember, as alongside this series, I will also be posting my Saturday SBD sessions on this channel. So remember to check out my TikTok at AB5, and also just give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.